Hello, my name is Armando Villaseca. I'm the Secretary of Education here in Vermont, and welcome to Education. Join the conversation. Today's topic is around career and technical centers and the important role they play in educating our young adults. But specific to that, we're also talking about the non-traditional careers that are opening up for both young women and young men as they look at their future options and what they want to pursue. With me today, I have some experts in that field, and to my right is Kelly Walsh, who is a director for the Vermont Works for Women. Thank you, Kelly. Lynn Vera, who is a counselor at the Center of Technology in Essex, who has worked with me for many years. Bob Travers, who is the director of the Career and Tech Center in Essex. And Jay Ramsey, who is the supervisor for the Department of Education's work on Career and Tech Center, Agency of Education, excuse me. Before I get much further, I want to give Jay an opportunity. Jay, give us a little bit of an overview of Career and Tech Education and what the goals are and what we're working on.
Okay. Well, thank you. Career and Technical Education used to be called Vocational Education. And, that's a no-no. We don't call it that anymore.
Okay.
And I think Career and Technical Education kind of gives a hint at what we're trying to do. Vocational education was kind of focused on one or two trade areas, and it was only for a few students, and they didn't. They were sort of tracked in that way, and they didn't get academic instruction that was integrated with their learning. So kind of have two alternate paths happening here. And what we in CTE, Career and Technical Education, not to be confused with CTE, the Center for Technology in Essex, CTE partners with business and industry to prepare all students, whether they want to pursue additional education and training after they graduate from high school or go directly into the workforce. We want them to leave with the skills necessary to be successful in whatever they choose to do. And so as part of that, our tech centers throughout the state, there are 17 tech centers organized by regions, offer programs that in some areas that are key to Vermont's economy. So agriculture, natural resources, food systems, hospitality and tourism, manufacturing, construction, engineering, STEM, healthcare, and information technology. Those are kind of some of our key areas. We also have programs in automotive technology and culinary arts. And so I'll stop there and say that the programs offer students opportunities for dual enrollment and opportunities that are articulated with colleges and real opportunities to learn about what it means to work. And so I want to make sure that we talk about how we're educating the student to be ready for the workforce and to be ready to go to college if that's what they want to do, whether it's 2 or 4 years or just a little college for certificate.
And I think that the point you made is that real integration of the academic as well as the career exploration piece, with the goal being that kids continue their education in some capacity, whatever they choose to do. And Bob and Lynn, I'm going to start with you guys because you're working in schools right now. Lynn, I'm going to ask you first about, as a counselor and looking at what are some of the opportunities that you see available for students, and why is a career and tech program maybe an alternative for many students from the traditional high school?
You know, if we were a different country, it probably wouldn't be an alternative or an either or. There would be more integration about lifelong learning because careers change and career choice matters. It matters in terms of your opportunities. We're talking about equity here, specifically gender equity, and so one of the things that I'm consciously aware of with young people is what is it going to take economically for you to have the life that you envision. And if you are a young woman and you follow some of the unfortunate patterns of single-parent families that were not intended to be that way, so that a young woman who is raising children on her own needs to be thinking very differently about her economic reality than perhaps a family with two parents or two partners funding that lifestyle. When I work with young people, I'm thinking about aptitudes, interests, dreams. What do you enjoy about school? What do you enjoy about your time outside of school? How can all that come together to try to help you make a pathway? I'm excited about personal learning plans.
Great.
Young people thinking about, how do I use school to create the life that I want? Certainly we have parents and grandparents and extended family influences, but that shouldn't be how kids choose their career only, because we're faced with the stereotypes and the limitations, perhaps, that maybe I grew up with or you grew up with. How do we expose young people to the emerging world of careers, many of which did not exist when we were young? And how do we strip away some of the obstacles or barriers that are imposed on young kids because they're still operating under some kind of sense of bias or stereotype about which careers are for girls and which are for boys? So those are some of the things that I think about when I think about this conversation. And in career and technical education, I'm just thrilled to be working in that field for as long as I have. I never get bored with it because the opportunities continue to change for kids. We'll talk about dual enrollment in a little while.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up because, Kelly, I'm going to go to you. One of the things that not only does looking at sort of non-traditional careers, but you're having a conversation with kids when they may be at that age where they don't want to be different than others. Mm-hmm. So that adds to the challenges. But your role as Vermont Works for Women really is looking at this, head on. And you could describe a little bit about what the organization does and some examples, which I learned it's not just about K to 12 kids, but it's it's adults as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you actually gave me a promotion with your introduction. I'm our director of girls programs at Vermont Works for Women. Yeah.
Okay.
But we're a nonprofit that's been around for 26 years, and our mission is to help women and girls recognize their potential and explore, pursue, and excel in work that leads to economic independence. So we started out as an organization doing just this, trying to get more women into non-traditional roles. And our focus has expanded since then to include a number of different things. Within the girls department, we focus with middle school and high school girls, helping them to think more broadly about the career options that are available to them. Because just as you say, too often we're limited in our thinking as to what we can do based on what we see and the stereotypes that are around us in our own communities, in our families, and definitely in the media, how those are portrayed. And so our work, I think, starts even earlier. We like to look at the middle school age and help within programs such as Rosie's Girls, which is a 3-week trades exploration day camp program, which is in session right now in Barrie, where we help girls think more broadly about those options. And so we focus on carpentry and welding and firefighting and car repair, and in conjunction with conversations around the messages that girls are getting about what it means to be a girl or a woman, and helping them to build their confidence and find their voice. Once we get to high school, we have what we call the Women Can Do Conference, which is in its 15th year, and it's a statewide trades and career exploration conference for high school girls. It happens every year at Vermont Technical College. This year it's on October 17th, and we bring in over 450 high school girls to the campus, and we take over, and we have over 40 workshops and 25 action expo stations where we bring in women who are professionals in these fields to teach girls about the opportunities that are available to them. So we have aviation, and we have heavy equipment operation, and we do chainsawing and welding and law enforcement and any number of different things, engineering. And the idea is to have girls get the chance to try out these things for themselves, because way before we can get to them in the high school age, they're making the decision that this is not for them, and they're closing some doors which really have incredible opportunities for them within their technical centers that are available. We also work with a lot of the technical centers in the state to help with their gender equity plan, to think about how they can make their learning environments more welcoming for both boys and girls who are considering programs that are not traditional for their gender. So what's the language that we're using in our classroom, and how can we make sure that we're inviting and welcoming to all the students that are in our area, because we want to make sure that it's not just those who are seeking it out, but how can we reach more and help them to think about that beyond the stereotypes that they've absorbed already.
Through those first 15, 16 years of their lives.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So Bob, you're the director. So now you take all this information, you're trying to, you're running a school that also depends on kids coming in.
Right.
And so programs have to be, to a certain extent, aligned to what the state needs are, but also what the interests of kids are. Mm-hmm. We add now what I think is a fabulous opportunity for young women and young boys to look at careers that maybe were ones that they wouldn't normally think about. How do you put this all together?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was thinking about what Jay had was talking about in terms of describing career and technical education and the continuum of how it's changed over time. Career and tech ed centers, as they exist now, were largely established in the early 70s in Vermont. Sending schools, we received sending schools from area high schools. The priorities and the ways of doing things in the 1970s aren't what they are today. Just like high schools have been required to change in a changing world, so have tech centers. We think about how do we drive interest for students. Right. Tech centers are entrepreneurial in nature. We have to essentially go out and market ourselves. We have to market ourselves to high school guidance departments, teachers, to families, and to students. The greatest driver is word of mouth. Those students who've had great success at tech centers talk about it. We also have a very strong tradition within families. If your sister or brother went to a career and tech center and enjoyed it, it's more likely that you'll go as well. Very much like what happens in high schools, where families identify with certain benefits that happen in high school. So I think one of the greatest areas of need is for us to start talking to families, to students, to teachers about career and tech education at a younger age. The more we can get young boys and girls to think about all their different options at a younger age, the easier it will be to continue that conversation when they have to make the very difficult decision of, do I go to high school, or do I go to a tech center, or can I have both? Mm-hmm. I've watched numbers of young students get excited about coming to a career tech ed center, commit to coming, and then when they finally have to do that, their peer group is what draws them in one direction or the other. That's not a surprise. We have to look at what we do within our centers to communicate that welcoming feeling to all students, and to communicate all of the options for all of our students, whether it's young females going into traditionally male roles or male programs, and young males going into traditionally female roles. It's not easy. I think some of the things we need to do is work on collaborating with our high schools, work on breaking down some of the fears that families and students might have. Huge. Yeah. Work on our relationships.
Right. Mm-hmm. And Bob, you mentioned that working with kids earlier, and Lynn, you mentioned something about PLPs.
Right.
Tell personal learning plans. Right. I don't want to be using just acronyms. So, personal learning plans is part of the Flexible Pathways Bill that was passed last year by our legislators. Can you explain what the personal learning plans are and how they then align with what Bob was saying about getting kids younger to start looking at those careers?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a fabulous model, and ideally what would happen is that every young person, with the adults who support them, would be thinking about, as I mentioned, aptitudes as well as interests, but that your learning would not all happen in a prescribed manner in a classroom that's based on what credits or number of seat hours you need to earn that diploma. So hopefully, from middle school through high school and into post-secondary education, people are looking at, Bob mentioned entrepreneurial, innovative ways of really grasping interests, building skills, working from a strengths perspective to help kids make a 4, 6, even K through 16 plan about how will I get toward what I think I want to do, and how do I build in enough experiences to check it out that I can change plans here and there as it starts to get sharper for me. We, unfortunately, I think, are linked in high schools to a system of check boxes of what we need to complete in order for a kid to get a diploma. And I think sometimes we're missing opportunities there to really enrich something with an internship or a shadow somewhere, or perhaps a class that isn't even in the high school at all. One of the benefits, I think, to dual enrollment opportunity in technical education is that, say you were enrolled in a computer systems technology program. As part of that, you have the opportunity to earn 8 college credits,
I'm glad you brought that
taking
up.
2 different classes, but they're actually taught within the tech center by the tech center instructor, who not only is a teacher, is an expert in the computer science field, is also an adjunct professor at one of our Vermont colleges. So those students who are ready, not all of them are, but the ones who are academically prepared when they come into the tech center or do the double time to get ready for it, when they see that opportunity, can earn college credits along with the high school credits, along with the technical center certification. That becomes part of that kid's perhaps personal learning plan that says, you know, I think I'm going to work an internship through the technical center in my senior year. I'm applying to Vermont Technical College or Clarkson University because this is where I think I want to go with my computer interest. That's, if we could work more closely with junior highs, with kids who explore through Rosie's Girls or who go to the Women Can Do conference, and we find a young woman with interest that we can shape toward, look at these STEM opportunities. Economically, this not only helps Vermont with our workforce development needs, but this helps you with a far higher beginning salary as you exit high school and move into your next level.
So I just want to piggyback on what you were talking about with the personal learning plans and tie that in with our conversation about gender equity. I think we tend to think that, of course, girls have opportunities just like boys do.
Yeah.
And it's the 21st century. How could they not? And we're not saying that. I think with gender equity, we're saying that girls have opportunities that are maybe tailored to them. It's like the idea of equality is everyone has a pair of shoes. The idea of equity is everyone's pair of shoes fit. So when we think about personal learning plans and the people in our middle schools and high schools that are going to be developing those plans with our students, I think really need to be thinking seriously about what could possibly get in the way of this girl student considering things that they might not consider because of their peer group or because of the messages that our society sends. So I think the tech centers are required to address gender equity issues in the plans that they submit for program approval. It's one of the performance measures that you have with Perkins money.
Perkins money is the federal money that comes to states for career and technical education.
That's right. Thank you. And so I think that our middle schools and high schools should seriously be considering how can they sprinkle in gender equity into the personal learning.
That's a great idea because, as Lynn had pointed out, so often something becomes a checkbox, and I'm afraid that PLPs will just become another, personal learning plans will just become another checkbox. What they should be is the thing that instigates a meaningful personal relationship with students and adults who have their future at interest. We've seen the trend towards smaller learning communities are better for students, so even big schools have taken important steps to make their schools feel smaller for their students. That usually translates into personal relationships with the adults who are working with you. If you then said your personal learning plan really needs to have a gender equity focus, whether you're a boy or a girl, and training happens behind that for both tech centers and high schools, I think it may have a real important effect on those numbers that we report. So statewide, our focus is to achieve a 16.85% gender equity reality for our students. What that means is students of our non-trad programs, we need to report that at least 16% of the enrollments are non-traditional students. Last year, Center for Technology Essex, 12%. We work hard. We've taken it on as a center-wide initiative, and still those stereotypes are hard to break down. Great idea of connecting two different, very interesting ideas together and see if that might have an effect. I like that very much.
So for example, a personalized learning plan at a middle school might say, that homeschool counselor might say, our kids should get out to either the Center for Technology hosts a Girls Can Too event, the statewide Women Can Do event. We also host conversations with role models for young men who might be interested in human services or health sciences careers, cosmetology, salon management. How do we make sure that we've just put those words out, and not just a word, but an actual vision to these kids that, do you know about this? And then furthermore, do you know what the training pathway is for this? What is the income that you can get here? Unfortunately, we still see in Vermont as well as in the nation, young women clustered in the lower paying career pathways and boys clustered in the other. Money is not the only, but it is an important thing for people to be thinking about as they make their plans for what education they're pursuing.
And I want to come back to this, but one of the, because I do want to talk a little bit about some of the opportunities that are available through the career tech centers, both for boys and young men and young women. But Kelly, what I keep hearing is, and it's got to be a huge challenge for you, as it is for all of us, that whole sort of traditional roles, the role modeling of my dad or my mom. That has to be, I think, quite the task to overcome for your organization specifically, but even when you're talking to 12, 11, 10-year-old girls about looking at something different.
Thanks for bringing that up, because, and Jay's point earlier about the idea that of course girls are welcome in this program, or of course girls should feel comfortable pursuing whatever they're most comfortable with, but I think one of the first steps in addressing this is acknowledging that these stereotypes and barriers still persist. And I've had tons of conversations with middle school girls in particular around what they see themselves doing and the careers that they'd like to pursue. And so often it's very much around what they see in their home life, in their society, and so much is in the media as well. So these are often very limited in terms of the whole spectrum of what's available to them. And I think I love coming back to a solution that anybody can walk home and can leave today and do right away, is to start talking at a younger age with both boys and girls about everything that's available to them. And when you're talking about firefighters or police officers, you're not just referring to him as him and male, but broadening that out. And the same things, you're not only talking about female nurses or female early childhood educators. And so we're starting that at a much earlier age. So it's not a surprise when you come across somebody in a non-traditional role later on, or so that they can start to see themselves in that way. And what's interesting is that Vermont Works for Women just published a report called the Enough Said Report.
I read that.
I'm so glad you read it.
I was there for the press conference.
Yes, exactly. In April, where we had an opportunity to speak with girls and young women aged 15 to 25 around the state. We conducted 9 listening sessions, and we asked a number of questions around career and job readiness, and what are their plans for the future, and how prepared do they feel to handle and manage work and money and different things like that. And there were 4 major findings. And so we originally started these listening sessions as a way to inform our own programming, and what does Vermont Works for Women need to do to help girls and young women of that age. And we quickly learned that this was a much bigger topic, and we needed to share it with a much larger audience. And so 2 of the findings are very pertinent to this conversation, and one of which was that across the board, girls and young women feel that they don't get exposed to enough careers, and there's not conversations around what else is available for them, and that doesn't happen in school. And so we need to start having that happen in school. And also that they are lacking in opportunities that fully engage them and help them to feel excited and passionate about something. And so much, when I go into the technical centers around the state, of what I do see are students, both male and female, in traditional and non-traditional roles, who are very passionate about what it is that they're studying. And I think that we need to continue to push that and open up those opportunities so we can get more kids engaged. And Lynn's point is a good one too, that it's not just about the economics for the individual, because obviously helping someone get into a non-traditional role, a woman in particular, is excellent for her. She's going to be able to better provide for her family. She's going to be more engaged in her work, but she can also then become a role model for the girls and young women in her community. And she can also, and then also we have that many more people that many more educated people within the workforce who can answer some of these questions and come up with some of these solutions that we're struggling with.
And you know, when we talk about societal, we also talk about parents' roles.
Absolutely.
And I know that I don't want to go that route, because that's another whole conversation. But that also adds to it. But one of the things that I do want to, one of the things you mentioned before, and I think Lynn also mentioned around the dual enrollment and personal learning plans, is that whole view that career and tech centers are not necessarily preparing kids for education beyond high school. Could you just talk a little bit about your experiences both at the Career Center in Essex as well as a director?
Sure. Well, our mission says, right on our mission plaque, it says that we're responsible, and it's measured by the state and the federal agencies, we're responsible for preparing students for career, for post-secondary, and to complete their high school graduation. So that's a tall task to take on, sometimes in 1 year, sometimes in 2, and every so often we see students for 3 years. I think what has helped over the years since the 70s into today's arrangement in tech centers is that we've really forged a relationship with two important sectors. We've formed a very strong relationship with our employers. Every career tech center program that's approved by the state is required to have a advisory committee, so we know what's going on in the industry and they can feed back to us what their needs are. And we're required to have relationships with post-secondary. So a large majority of our programs at the center offer dual enrollment credits. They are required to offer industry-recognized credentials, and they create a relationship between potential employers and our students. 90% of our students at Center for Technology Essex experience a minimum of a 2-week career work experience, many of them 2 or 3 of them, where they're out in the industry getting to see what it's like to work in that industry. A large percentage, Lynn, how many of our students earn college credits?
We had 70 students last year earn some amount of college credit, and that's out of 430 students who are eligible for that. A lot of kids who initially come to us might not be thinking about college.
Right.
And we're trying to use the language post-secondary
Post-secondary,
education,
great, I'm glad you brought
because,
that up.
you know, what does it mean? It might mean a 2-year college degree in a technical college. It might mean you start at CCV or in our community college system and think about how to tweak your interests.
Apprenticeship programs are continuing
Apprenticeship
education.
programs
which
are
is
fabulous.
Yes.
Which not only do you not pay for, but you
Right.
are paid
Right.
while you are earning this very, very valuable license, which I think I recently paid the electrician who came to my house over $40 an hour. I'm not sure I make that. So, you know, here's the thing. When you're trying to help young people think about futures, it's not only that equity is blind. In fact, I think as we all are trying to enact in our work, equity is about matching supports and pathways for kids based on who that kid is, based on that student's personal learning plan. And so blind is actually a form of discrimination, because you and I may have very different needs, not only because we're different genders, but other things in our world. In technical centers, we are small enough and focused enough that we try to develop a personalized learning plan that's relationship-based with every student. And hopefully that will carry through to their CWEs so that they actually see their supervisor in the workplace as part of that plan. That person may be advising them about, well, this is what I did after high school. This is the next training I went to. This is what our industry offers. If you're an auto tech, you may get your associate's degree, but then you actually go on through industry. And they can start that in our schools. Students can earn ASC certifications while they're in high school.
And Lynn, the nice piece about this is that it's not their parents telling them or their teachers telling them. It's somebody outside of school who has a career in that area. And I want to just go back because we're wrapping things up, and there's a million things we could talk about. I wanted to talk about funding and some of the challenges, but maybe on another day. But it's that relationship building. Because I look at one of the challenges that we have here in Vermont is that some of our young people are leaving the state. Right. One of the things that, whether it's through the dual enrollment, I have now a relationship with Johnson State, with CCV. Once I get a relationship with somebody, I may choose to go there. The other one is relationships with employers. I'm doing an internship, you know, and with Kelly, and all of a sudden I have a relationship with Kelly that may help me stay here in Vermont. And one of the things that I think you all do is you've really helped lead education. The change that we're trying to do in Vermont has been role model. The model has been Career and Tech Center. So I want folks to understand the importance of that. The governor's initiative on science, on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math is, again, one of the areas you do. How do we get more young women to be looking at STEM careers as a viable option, who then become role models for others? So it's really exciting work that you all do. I wish we had another hour to talk, because I see Bob has written things and Lynn has written things down, and also about some of the challenges that we face, not only around gender roles, but also the parental views of career and tech centers as not being the reality of what they are today, and how funding in some situations here in Vermont, many, can sometimes be an obstacle for schools and high schools and career tech centers to work together. But I think we've gone over our time.
Is there a website, Vermont Department
Oh, please,
of
and actually I was
Education?
going to ask you about,
Sure.
I'm sorry.
So I'm just thinking, even, no matter where you live in Vermont, there is a career and technical center there.
Yes.
And so even if you just go to the Vermont Department of
Yes.
Education website and look at career and technical education, and you are vtworksforwomen.org.
That's right.
That's right.
And so the internet seems to invade all of our lives all the time, but if you'd rather just a phone call, please call us. Every career and tech center is listed on the Department of Ed's website.
Yes.
Call us.
And I wanted to make sure that we got your website out, because some of the information you gave may be of interest of others. So, Lynn,
hope
maybe
so.
we should tag team this. Anyway, thanks again for joining us for education, join the conversation, and hopefully this has provided you with a glimpse of some of the great things that are going on in our career and tech centers, and some of the work that we're all doing to try to break down those barriers for careers for kids. And if you have any questions, as Lynn said, feel free to call. And if not, we'll see you next month on education. Join the conversation.